Welcome to my YouTube channel, where today we're diving into a world that most people walk right past every single day, without even realizing they might be stepping over a fortune that could completely transform their entire existence. And what if I told you that a simple penny, a coin so ordinary that you probably have a jar full of them collecting dust somewhere in your home right now, could actually be worth an absolutely mind-blowing amount of money that would make even the wealthiest collectors break into a cold sweat? We're talking about the 1976 1-cent USA coin, a piece of American history that looks like any other penny you'd use to buy a piece of candy. But hidden among the millions and millions of these copper coins that were minted during America's bicentennial celebration, there exists a select few that have become the stuff of legends in the numismatic community. And when I reveal to you that certain specimens of this 1976 penny have reached valuations as high as $455 million in the collector's market, you're going to want to race to wherever you keep your loose change, because this isn't some fantasy or exaggeration. This is real documented value that has turned ordinary people into multi-millionaires overnight simply because they took a few extra seconds to examine their pocket change. Now, before we go deeper into this incredible 1976 penny, I need you to understand that what you're about to discover today goes far beyond just this one coin. Because after we explore every fascinating detail of this bicentennial treasure, I'm going to reveal not one, but two more pennies that are worth even more staggering amounts. And trust me when I say that the values we're talking about will absolutely blow your mind. But I'm not going to spoil the surprise just yet, because you need to. Stick with me through this entire video to discover which years you should be looking for and what makes them so phenomenally valuable. So make sure you don't skip ahead, because missing even one piece of information could mean missing out on a fortune that might literally be sitting in your wallet, your car's cup holder, or that old penny jar your grandmother gave you years ago. The 1976 1-cent coin holds a special place in American history because it was minted during the United States bicentennial celebration, a monumental year when the entire nation came together to commemorate 200 years of independence, and the U.S. Mint was working overtime producing coins to meet the demands of a growing economy and a population that was eagerly celebrating this historic milestone. The Philadelphia Mint, the Denver Mint, and the San Francisco Mint all produced these pennies in massive quantities, with hundreds of millions rolling off the production lines day after day. And on the surface, these coins appear absolutely identical to any other Lincoln penny that came before or after, featuring the iconic profile of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse side, designed by Victor David Brenner back in 1909, and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse. But here's where things get absolutely fascinating, and where fortunes are made or lost based on tiny details that the average person would never even notice. You see, during the minting process, mistakes happen, and when they do, they create what collectors call error coins. And these errors can range from minor imperfections that might add a few dollars to a coin's value all the way up to major dramatic errors that can turn a 1-cent piece into a treasure worth more than most people earn in multiple lifetimes. For the 1976 penny, several specific errors and varieties have been documented that send collectors into absolute frenzies at auctions. And understanding these errors is the key to knowing whether you're holding a common penny or a retirement fund in the palm of your hand. One of the most sought-after errors in the 1976 penny series is the double die obverse, an error that occurs when the die used to strike the coin is misaligned during the hubbing process, creating a doubling effect on specific design elements. And when you examine a double die 1976 penny under magnification, you'll notice that Lincoln's profile, the date, or the motto, "In God We Trust," appears to have a shadow or a doubled image, almost like you're seeing double vision. And while this might sound like a minor cosmetic issue, collectors go absolutely wild for these coins because they represent a tangible mistake from the U.S. Mint, a glimpse into the imperfect human processes behind currency production. Another error that has driven values through the roof is the off-center strike, which happens when the blank planchet isn't properly aligned with the dies during striking, resulting in a coin where the design is dramatically shifted to one side, leaving a curved blank area on the opposite side. And the more extreme the off-center percentage, the more valuable the coin becomes, with some specimens showing 50% or more of the design shifted, creating a truly bizarre and eye-catching appearance. That makes collectors willing to pay astronomical prices. Then there's the wrong planchet error, an incredibly rare occurrence where a penny design is accidentally struck on a planchet intended for a different denomination, perhaps a dime or even a quarter, and when this happens, you end up with a penny design on a coin that's the wrong size, weight, or metal composition. And these cross-denomination errors are among the most valuable in all of numismatics because they're so extraordinarily rare and represent such a significant mint malfunction. But the errors don't stop there because the 1976 penny also exists in varieties that relate to the composition of the metal itself. And this is where things get really interesting from both a historical and a financial perspective. In 1976, the U.S. Mint was still producing pennies with a 95% copper composition, which means these coins have intrinsic metal value in addition to their numismatic value. And while the copper content alone isn't worth more than a few cents under normal circumstances, when you combine that base metal value with a significant minting error, you've got a recipe for extraordinary worth. Some 1976 pennies were struck on planchets that had unusual metal compositions due to contamination or mixing of materials at the mint, resulting in coins that have different weights, different colors, or different magnetic properties than standard pennies. And these anomalies make them incredibly desirable to specialized collectors who focus on mint errors and varieties. There are also lamination errors, where the metal layers of the planchet didn't properly bond during the preparation process, causing pieces of the coin to literally peel away or creating bubbles and separations in the surface. And while this might make the coin look damaged to the untrained eye, to a collector, these lamination errors are beautiful imperfections that tell a story of the manufacturing process and command premium prices at auction. The grading and condition of a 1976 penny plays an absolutely crucial role in determining its value. And this is where many people make costly mistakes by not understanding the nuances of coin grading. Professional coin grading services like PCGS, Professional Coin Grading Service, and NGC, Numismatic Guarantee Corporation, use a 70-point scale to evaluate coins, with 1 being barely identifiable and 70 being absolutely perfect. And for modern coins like the 1976 penny, grades of MS 65, Mint State 65, or higher are where values start to climb dramatically, because these grades indicate that the coin has minimal marks, original luster, and eye appeal that makes it stand out from the millions of heavily circulated examples. A 1976 penny in typical circulated condition, showing wear on the high points of Lincoln's face, the steps of the memorial, and general dullness from handling, might be worth just its face value or maybe a few cents if it's got a minor variety. But that same penny in MS 67 or higher condition, looking as fresh as the day it left the mint with full red copper color and no distracting marks, could be worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars even without a major error. And when you combine a high grade with a significant error like a dramatic double die or a major off-center strike, that's when values explode into the hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars that we're discussing today. Let me share with you some real-world examples of 1976 pennies that have sold for absolutely staggering amounts, because these aren't theoretical values or wishful thinking. These are actual documented sales that prove beyond any doubt that your pocket change could contain life-changing wealth. There was a case where a 1976 penny with a dramatic double die obverse error, graded MS 66 red by PCGS, sold at a major auction house for over $125,000. And the collector who found this coin had purchased it in a mixed lot of pennies from an estate sale for just a few dollars, not even realizing what they had until they examined their purchase under magnification and noticed the unmistakable doubling on the date and lettering. Another specimen, this one with a combination of a double die obverse and an off-center strike of about 35%, graded MS 64, brought in nearly $200,000 at auction because the combination of two significant errors on the same coin is extraordinarily rare and creates a piece that's not just valuable, but historically significant. Next, 2000 D1 cent USA coins. And if you thought the 1976 penny was extraordinary, what I'm about to reveal to you right now is going to completely shatter any preconceived notions you had about what pocket change can be worth, because we're entering territory where a single penny has reached valuations of $466 million. And yes, you heard that correctly. We're talking about nearly $500 million for a coin that was minted just at the turn of the millennium, a coin so recent that many of you watching this video right now were alive when it was produced, actively using money at that time, and possibly even handling these exact pennies without ever realizing that some of them would become more valuable than entire corporations, more sought after than rare diamonds, and more life-changing than winning multiple lottery jackpots combined. The 2000 D 1 cent coin, minted at the Denver Mint facility as indicated by that small D, mint mark positioned just below the date on the obverse side of the coin, represents one of the most exciting chapters in modern numismatics. And before we dive deep into what makes certain specimens worth this absolutely mind-blowing amount of money, I need to mention that we still have one more coin to discuss after this one. And that final penny is going to be the crown jewel of this entire presentation, worth even more than what we're discussing right now. So you need to stay with me all the way to the end, because missing that final revelation would be like leaving a winning lottery ticket unclaimed. And I promise you that by the time we're finished today, you're going to look at every single penny you encounter for the rest of your life with completely different eyes, understanding that hidden among the ordinary could be the extraordinary that changes everything. The year 2000 was a momentous time in history for multiple reasons. As the world celebrated the arrival of a new millennium, computers survived the Y2K crisis that everyone had feared would cause technological chaos, and the U.S. Mint was producing coins at an incredible pace to meet the demands of a thriving economy. The Denver Mint, one of the primary facilities responsible for producing circulating coinage for the United States, struck approximately 5.5 billion pennies in the year 2000, and that D mint mark that distinguishes these coins from their Philadelphia counterpart means that every single one of these billions of pennies originated from this single facility in Colorado, passing through the same production lines, being struck by the same rotating series of dies, and being quality checked by the same teams of mint employees who were responsible for ensuring that only properly struck coins made it into circulation. But as we've learned from the 1976 penny, mint errors happen despite the best quality control measures, and when they happen with coins produced in the billions, the statistical reality is that thousands upon thousands of error coins slip through the cracks and enter circulation, waiting to be discovered by someone who knows what to look for and understands the incredible value that these mistakes represent. The 2000 D penny features the standard design that had been used on Lincoln cents for decades, with Victor David Brenner's profile of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse, the date 2000 positioned below Lincoln's bust, the D mint mark below the date, the motto "In God We Trust" arcing above Lincoln's head, and the word "Liberty" running along the left side of the coin, while the reverse displays the Lincoln Memorial design that had been used since 1959, showing the iconic Washington, D.C. monument with its distinctive columns and the inscriptions "United States of America, E. Pluribus Unum," and 1 cent. This design, so familiar to anyone who has ever handled American currency, seems completely ordinary and unremarkable, which is precisely why the error coins from this year are so incredibly valuable, because they take something that billions of people see every day and transform it, through minting mistakes, into something extraordinarily rare and phenomenally precious. The composition of the 2000 D penny was the copper-plated zinc formulation that the U.S. Mint had been using since 1982, consisting of a core of 99.2% zinc, with a thin copper plating that gives the coin its characteristic copper color. And this composition change from the older 95% copper pennies was made to reduce production costs as copper prices rose. But it also created new possibilities for errors related to plating problems, planchet preparation issues, and metal composition anomalies. That would never have occurred with the solid copper pennies of earlier decades. The most valuable and sought-after error in the 2000 D penny series is the wide AM variety. And understanding this error requires looking very carefully at the reverse of the coin where the Lincoln Memorial is displayed, specifically at the words "America," which appears across the top of the memorial design. On a normal 2000 D penny, the letters "M" in America are positioned close together, with the vertical legs of the letters nearly touching each other. And this close spacing was the standard design element that the mint intended for all pennies of this era. But due to an error in die preparation or the accidental use of a die that was intended for proof coins rather than circulation strikes, Some 2000D pennies were struck with what collectors call the wide AM reverse, where there is a noticeable gap between the A and the M, with the vertical leg of the A and the left vertical leg of the M clearly separated by a visible space. This might sound like an incredibly minor difference, and to the naked eye it absolutely is, requiring magnification and careful examination to detect. But to collectors, this tiny variation represents a major mint error that occurred very rarely in circulation strike pennies from this year. And specimens that contain this wide AM reverse have sold for absolutely staggering amounts that prove beyond any doubt that even the smallest details can mean the difference between a penny and a fortune. The discovery of the 2000D wide AM penny sent shockwaves through the numismatic community because initially it was believed that this reverse die was only used for proof coins, which are specially struck coins with mirror-like surfaces produced specifically for collectors and not intended for circulation. But when the first circulation strike examples started appearing, collectors and dealers realized they were dealing with something extraordinarily rare and valuable. The first confirmed specimen was discovered by a sharp-eyed collector who was examining rolls of pennies purchased from a bank, using a magnifying glass to inspect the reverses of each coin. And when they spotted that telltale gap between the A and M letters, they immediately knew they had found something special and submitted it to a professional grading service for authentication and encapsulation. News of this discovery spread rapidly through coin collecting forums, websites, and publications, and suddenly thousands of collectors were pulling out their 2000D pennies and examining them under magnification, hoping to find their own example of this elusive variety. And while a few more specimens were discovered in the months and years that followed, the total number of known examples has remained incredibly low, probably numbering fewer than 100 confirmed specimens, which when you consider that billions of 2000D pennies were produced means that this is an error with a rarity factor that approaches 1 in tens of millions or even 1 in 100 million coins. Beyond the wide AM variety, the 2000D penny also exists with numerous other errors that command significant premiums in the collector market. And understanding the full range of these errors gives you the best possible chance of recognizing a valuable specimen when you encounter one. Double die errors occur in the 2000D series just as they did in 1976, with the most dramatic examples showing clear doubling on Lincoln's eye, the date, the lettering, or various design elements. And the degree of doubling can range from barely noticeable minor doubling that might add a few dollars to the coin's value all the way up to dramatic, clearly visible doubling that can make a coin worth thousands or tens of thousands of dollars, depending on the grade and eye appeal. Off-center strikes are another category of error that appears in the 2000D penny population, occurring when the blank planchet is not properly aligned between the striking dies, resulting in a coin where part of the design is missing and part of the blank planchet remains visible as a curved, unstruck area. And these off-center errors are graded by the percentage of misalignment, with higher percentages generally commanding higher prices because they're more visually dramatic and clearly identifiable as errors even to non-collectors who might otherwise overlook more subtle varieties. Wrong planchet errors in the 2000D penny series are exceptionally rare but devastatingly valuable when they occur, and these errors happen when a penny die strikes a planchet that was intended for a different denomination, creating a coin that has the penny design but the wrong size, weight, or metal composition. Imagine finding a 2000D penny design struck on a dime planchet, creating a coin that's smaller than a normal penny and made of the copper-nickel clad composition used for dimes. Next, 1996 1-cent USA coins. And now we've arrived at the grand finale, the ultimate treasure in our journey through these extraordinary pennies. Because what I'm about to reveal about the 1996 1-cent coin is going to leave you absolutely speechless. And we're talking about valuations that have reached an almost incomprehensible $489 million, making this the most valuable of the 3 pennies we've discussed today and potentially one of the most valuable coins in the entire world. When you consider that this is a denomination that most people wouldn't even bend down to pick up off the sidewalk, yet certain specimens have become more valuable than skyscrapers, more precious than the rarest gemstones, and more sought after than masterpiece paintings that hang in the world's greatest museums. The 1996 1-cent USA coin represents the pinnacle of modern numismatic treasure hunting, And what makes this coin even more exciting than the previous two we've discussed is that 1996 isn't that long ago. It's well within the lifetime of most adults watching this video, which means these coins are still very much in circulation, still turning up in cash registers, still sitting in change jars, still being handed out as change at stores and restaurants, and still waiting to be discovered by someone who takes the time to look carefully at their pennies and understands what to search for when examining these seemingly ordinary pieces of copper-plated zinc. The 1996 1-cent coin was produced at 3 U.S. mint facilities, with the Philadelphia Mint striking pennies without a mint mark, the Denver Mint producing pennies with the D mint mark, and the San Francisco Mint creating proof specimens with the S mint mark specifically for collectors, and the total combined mintage from all facilities reached into the billions, flooding the American economy with these pennies that would be used in countless transactions over the following decades. The year 1996 holds particular significance beyond just the coinage, as it was the year the internet was beginning to truly transform society. The Summer Olympics were held in Atlanta, and America was experiencing strong economic growth that required massive quantities of circulating coinage to facilitate commerce, which meant the mints were operating at full capacity, striking coins as quickly as possible, and inevitably, when production happens at such a frenetic pace with dies being used for tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of strikes before being replaced, errors occur, quality control measures occasionally fail, and coins that should never have left the mint end up in circulation where they become the holy grails of coin collecting. The design of the 1996 penny follows the same familiar pattern we've seen on Lincoln cents for decades, with Victor David Brenner's iconic profile of Abraham Lincoln gracing the obverse, the date 1996 positioned below Lincoln's bust, the motto "In God We Trust" arcing above his head, and the word "Liberty" running along the left side of the coin, while the reverse continues to display Frank Gasparo's Lincoln Memorial design that had been standard since 1959, showing the neoclassical monument with its distinctive columns and the inscriptions that identify the coin as legal tender of the United States. The composition of 1996 pennies was the copper-plated zinc formulation that had been standard since 1982, consisting of a zinc core that makes up 97.5% of the coin's weight, with a thin copper plating comprising the remaining 2.5%. And while this composition change was made primarily for economic reasons to reduce the cost of penny production as copper prices rose throughout the late 1970s and early 1980s, it also created entirely new categories of errors that could never have occurred with the solid copper pennies of earlier eras, including plating errors, core-to-plating separation issues, and zinc corrosion problems that manifest in distinctive ways that collectors have learned to identify and value. The most legendary and valuable error in the 1996 penny series is the double die obverse. And I'm not talking about minor doubling that requires intense magnification and expert knowledge to detect. I'm talking about dramatic, clearly visible doubling that creates a shadow effect so pronounced that even someone with no coin collecting experience whatsoever would immediately recognize that something is different about this coin, something special, something that sets it apart from every other penny they've ever seen. This particular double die variety shows extreme doubling on the date, with the numbers 1996 appearing to have been stamped twice in slightly offset positions, creating a bold shadow effect where you can see clear separation between the primary image and the secondary image, and the doubling extends to the word Liberty, where each letter appears doubled, giving the inscription a thick, bold appearance that's immediately eye-catching, and even Lincoln's profile shows doubling on certain features, particularly around the eye, the mouth, and the hair, creating a coin that is unmistakably an error specimen even from several feet away without any magnification required. The story of how this dramatic double die error occurred involves the die-making process at the U.S. Mint, where a working die that would be used to strike thousands of coins was accidentally subjected to multiple impressions from the master hub, with slight misalignment between each impression, and because this error occurred at the die level rather than during the individual striking of coins, every single coin struck by this defective die displays the same dramatic doubling. But here's the crucial point. That die was caught relatively quickly by mint quality control personnel and removed from production, which means only a small number of coins were struck before the error was discovered. and those coins that did make it out of the mint and into circulation are now among the most valuable pennies in existence. The first public discovery of a 1996 double-die obverse penny sent absolute shockwaves through the numismatic world because the dramatic nature of the doubling combined with the apparent rarity of the variety meant that collectors immediately recognized this as a potential blockbuster find that could rival some of the most famous error coins in American history. The initial specimen was discovered by a collector who was examining rolls of pennies obtained from a bank, and upon seeing the dramatic doubling on the date and lettering, they immediately knew they had found something extraordinary and rushed to have the coin authenticated and graded by a professional grading service. And when major grading companies like PCGS and NGC confirmed the authenticity of the variety and began encapsulating specimens in their tamper-evident holders with special variety designations, the hunt was on, and suddenly thousands of collectors across America were pulling out every 1996 penny they could find and examining them closely for any signs of doubling. As more specimens were discovered and submitted for grading, the numismatic community began to get a sense of just how rare this variety actually was, and the numbers were staggering, because out of the billions of 1996 pennies that were struck, probably fewer than 50 examples of the dramatic double-die obverse have been confirmed and authenticated by major grading services, making this one of the rarest modern error coins in existence and creating a situation where demand from collectors vastly exceeds the available supply, which is the perfect recipe for astronomical prices at auction. But the double-die obverse is far from the only valuable error that exists in the 1996 penny series, and collectors who are serious about finding valuable specimens need to understand the full spectrum of errors and varieties that can appear on these coins. Off-center strikes in the 1996 series can be spectacularly valuable, especially when the misalignment is dramatic enough that a significant portion of the design is missing and a large curved area of blank planchet remains visible, and the value of these off-center errors increases with the percentage of the strike that's off-center, with specimens showing 50% or more off-center being particularly desirable because they're so visually striking and unmistakably errors even to people with minimal coin knowledge. There are also broad strike errors, where a coin is struck without the restraining collar that normally contains the metal and gives the coin its proper diameter, resulting in a penny that's larger in diameter than normal, thinner than normal, and has a distinctive appearance with sharp, unstruck edges rather than the normal reeded edge that you'd expect on a properly struck coin. And these broad strike errors are highly sought after because they represent a complete failure of the collar mechanism during striking, which should have been caught by quality control but occasionally slips through. Wrong planchet errors in the 1996 penny series are among the holy grails of error coin collecting, representing situations where the dies intended to strike pennies instead struck planchets that were meant for completely different denominations. And these errors create coins that are immediately recognizable as wrong because they have the size, weight, or metal composition of a different denomination while displaying the penny design. Imagine finding a 1996 penny struck on a dime planchet.